So we can even go a little bit more granular with this concept of taking breaks, because I think we sometimes think about, oh, I'll work really hard and then I'll go and take that vacation. But I don't think that's sufficient. So I think breaks can also mean like what you said, which is maybe you just take one extra day off and make it a 3-day weekend. I knew somebody when I was working way back when in a nonprofit where what this person did was take all of their vacation days, and instead of clump them together for a long getaway, they would take every 3-day weekend and add a 4th day and have a 4-day weekend. And we tend to have those on average every 1 to 2 months anyway. Mm-hmm. So basically every 1 to 2 months, they had a 4-day break from work. And I thought, oh, this is a kind of an interesting concept, right? So I think there's that. And I also think there's the importance of taking breaks throughout the day. Yeah. Can you speak to that? And I know a lot of physicians feel like they're back to back with all the patients that they have to see. Then they got to write all their notes. Like, who the hell has time for a break, right? So what would you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I do. So I try to, we in theory have an hour at lunchtime. Like there's a break in the patients between 12 and 1, but often the morning will spill over into lunchtime. I'm sure that happens for a lot of people. And so your 1 hour may become 10 minutes to eat. And so what I try to do is I don't chart during that time. I just tend to like close the door, sit in quiet in my office and eat and have like a little mindfulness meditation minute. The other thing I do, I really like tea. I have lots of herbal tea in my office, and I will just take, 2 minutes and go and boil the water and like make myself a cup of tea, but just taking a little bit of a break to check in with myself before the afternoon starts rolling, because sometimes there really isn't much time. I mean, it's very nice if we have an hour, that that's ideal. And then I can get some charting done during that time. But yeah, I often only have 10 or 15 minutes. And then the same thing if it's a particularly busy morning or afternoon, sometimes in between patients, I'll just take a beat, even if it's 1 minute, to just be by myself in the office and gather my thoughts before I go into the next room. I guess I call them myself like little mindfulness minutes, or just taking a minute to focus on my breathing. I use box breathing a lot. Mm-hmm. In the middle of the day, you can have any number of, very positive encounters and sometimes not so positive encounters. And so I don't want to take that energy from a not so positive encounter with me the whole day. So it's important to, when I close the door on that, to really close the door before I keep moving. So that's how I manage. I mean, it's not perfect. It's a work in progress, but.
Well, nothing really is perfect, and we're not going for perfection here. But I think the biggest mindset shift for people, if you're listening, is that we sometimes think about these breaks or this space, this time for ourselves in a very black and white kind of way. It's either I have a whole bunch of time to do something and then I don't, and then I do it. Or if I don't have, because nobody has time, right? Then we don't do anything. And what I love about your method or your mindset when you're talking about this process of living a life that is more resistant to burnout, if we can say that, it's that you start small and you literally will take 1 minute, if that's all you have, and maximize that minute so that it at least gives you a mini reset. And if you do that, even a couple of times a day, it makes a difference compared to not taking those minute here, minute there, all of 2 minutes, like total, to reset yourself, right? So I love the idea of start small, work with what you got, build on it from there as you progress. And it's even when you talk about creating space, I think it's like in your mind, you have to create the mental space that you can do this stuff, even if you start like with one step forward.
Yep. Yep. It's the
That's
same
really
way.
powerful.
I think it's the same. I mean, maybe that makes sense that I became a running coach, but it's the same with running. It's like, work with what you got, start slow, start somewhere.
That's perfect. What a great analogy. I love it. So I want to come back for a moment to your burnout story. So you are, you're at least the first one that you shared with us is it's after residency. You've got all of these environmental stressors, but I'm really curious, how did you show up? Usually when people share their burnout story, they talk about how they really pushed themselves, or they were stuck in all this negativity, or they had compassion fatigue, or some version of that helps us to kind of see how they were engaging with their environment. And I'm curious, as you graduated, you started your first job, you moved, you got married, you had all these things happen. Where were you in all that?
The best I could describe it, I felt like I was in a fog. Like I just felt tired all the time. Like I had no energy, and I thought, well, I finished my residency and we didn't get much sleep, but I thought at some point it would get better. But I still just felt tired. Like I really was not, I don't think I was really doing any of the things that I shared in terms of tips for everyone else, but I didn't have time set aside for myself. I wasn't exercising. I didn't have a regular sleep schedule. Part of that was the job and like switching back and forth from day shifts to night shifts. So I'm sure that didn't help, but the whole period of time is a bit of a fog for me. But
then you said you had some other burnout episodes. Were they kind of similar, or was there something different going on there?
Yeah, I think I would describe that as a feeling of general like discontent at work, like feeling like an example would be I remember standing, in the back of the emergency department, like before or after my shift, and just kind of standing there like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I don't really want to be doing this anymore. So why am I still doing this? And how can I was just like questioning myself, how can I move forward? Like, I couldn't see longevity in the career, at least in the situation that I was in. And that happened, multiple times over the years. And I guess I feel like it was an undercurrent, if that makes sense. Like I was functioning, I was showing up to work and doing my job, but I was not thrilled about it.
Yeah. Well, just from listening to you talk and how you manage yourself, I'm really struck by it appears like you have quite a high EQ to be able to manage in this way, and also just not beat yourself up, which I think a lot of people do, which contributes tremendously to stress and burnout. So it sounds like you have a pretty good relationship with yourself, if we should put it that way. Yeah. And I think that is probably part of your big secret on how you can potentially avoid burnout. And I think that's also to say that even when EQ is high and you're managing well and you're not beating yourself up, that burnout can still happen when you feel like it's a bad fit with your place of work, which it sounds like something was going on there where you lost that sense of fulfillment or meaning. And what I love as you're describing this is that you have so much self-awareness. You're asking yourself the right questions. You're kind of coaching yourself as you go through your journey, which helps you to make the right kind of change at the right time as you need it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in terms of being hard on myself, really the one thing I would say is that I would wish that I did something, that I would make a change sooner than I did. Mm-hmm. But looking back, especially with that first period of time, there was so much going on, and it really took a long time to kind of sort through that. So I'm not sure I could have made the changes any earlier, but everything happens in its own time. But eventually I got there. And I think for me, the important thing is that I think this other side of my life, that there are multiple things. I'm not just a physician. Like that is that is my job. But I have all of these other things also. And I think just recognizing that and cultivating all of the other things has helped me to stay in it.
Well, I think, Michelle, your message is really a breath of fresh air. So I appreciate you sharing your message here on the show. And where are you located if people want to coach with you for running?
Yeah, so I'm in Philadelphia, but I do most of my coaching virtually. So I have people all over the US.
So how does that work? How do people coach like running? Like they don't have to actually run with you. How does that work?
Right. Yeah. So I have one-on-one clients, and I write customized training plans and do personalized coaching with them. So we do coaching calls, and then I write them a training plan. And then I have a group program for newer runners, more beginner runners, called Ready, Set, Run. And same thing, we meet on Zoom and do it that way. For my local people, I'm always happy to meet up for a run, but the majority of my people are not local.
So it's kind of like if you were to go to a dietitian and they would make you a meal plan, and then you go and create all of the meals and you report back. And that's what I'm hearing you say is you apply that sort of a model for running, which is cool, because then if you're listening to this and you don't live in the area, you can still work with Michelle. So Michelle, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, I think the best place is probably the website, which is mindful-marathon.com. And I'm on Instagram at mindful.marathon, and I'm on Facebook as myself, Michelle Quirk. But the best place is the website, and you can find out information about the next group or one-on-one coaching. And there are some freebies there if you are interested in getting started to run, or if you haven't run in a long time, there is a workshop and a training plan on there.
Very, very cool. Now, before we wrap up, I have one final question for you. Typically, one of the things that we talk about here is your programming. And usually when we talk about your programming, it's the thing that has contributed to people's burnout. And I have to imagine that in your case, there is some sort of programming that has allowed you to be as resilient as you are. What would you say that might be?
Oh my. I've always been a very positive person. And able to see the positive in some pretty crappy situations. So I'm not sure if that's what it is in terms of resilience, but yeah.
And where did that come from? I mean, did you see your parents model that, or how did you end up with this mindset?
I think maybe from my dad. Both of my parents were in education. My mom was a third grade teacher for many years, and my dad was a math teacher and then a principal. And, I definitely saw them work hard. They were working in the evenings on lesson plans and things like that. But my dad, he was a wrestling coach, and that was before I came along. But I can see how he was a coach to us, to my sister and I, and to others in the family, and just, able to spin negative situations and kind of work through, like, how are we going to move through this? Or even simple things like, failing a test or something in school, but like, is this really the worst thing that could have happened? No. How can we move past it? Like, always looking for solutions. So I think maybe he modeled that. Maybe.
Yeah, well, I think, one of your tips was to work with the coach, and how lucky for you to be able to actually grow up with a coach. So that's actually very, very cool. Something we don't usually hear about. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for coming on again and sharing all this. I think this is very inspirational for people out there listening, especially for pediatricians, but really for anybody who feels like they don't have time and they're feeling the grind of their work. Now, for all of you thinkers out there, I'd love to hear, what did you think of the show? And if you're a feeler, how did hearing this make you feel? And for all you doers out there, what are you going to do based on what you heard today? Now, regardless of what your personality code is, my goal is to spread the word that burnout is a unique experience. And by decoding it, you can find solutions that are equally unique to you. Help me spread this message by subscribing to the show on Apple or Spotify and leaving a review telling me what you think, feel, or do differently because of the show. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you can also leave me a comment or questions to answer in future episodes. And please recommend the show to anyone struggling with burnout. If you're ready to take the next step with me to decode your burnout, go to decodeyourburnout.com. I'll see you back here next week. Take care.